The humans arrived on the battlefield and started killing aliens with the cold fury only Earthmen possess. Just moments ago, the Kriak fleet had been on the brink of total annihilation at the hands of the despicable Zonian. Dozens of once proud Kriak ships were blasted apart by relentless enemy fire, reduced to drifting wrecks venting bodies and rubble. Captain Zarok gripped his command console in grim despair as damage reports flooded in. Weapons offline, shields failing, hull breaches on all decks. They were outclassed, outgunned, and out of options. Zarok opened his mouth to order a full retreat to salvage any scrap that remained of his decimated fleet. Suddenly, a new deep voice crackled over the comm channel. "This is Captain Jason Reeves of the United Earth ship Defiant. We hear you, Kriak, and help is on the way. Stand by for reinforcements." A tremendous human dreadnought dropped out of warp, cannons already spitting deadly fire at the Zonian ships. Perhaps today would not be the day the Kriak fell after all, as long as those whose killing machines were here to even the odds. Emperor Zarthan reclined in his command throne, a sneer spreading across his scaly face as he watched the pathetic Kriak fleet disintegrate under a barrage of plasma torpedoes. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The chance to seize the Kriak territories had finally come. The reptilian overlord had made meticulous preparations for this very day. Every credit that could be squeezed from the Zorgon coffers had gone into the Imperial war machine. Teams of the brightest Zorgon scientists worked tirelessly to perfect shielding tech that could shrug off anything short of a supernova. Munitions factories churned out missiles with the power to split continents, and shipyards assembled gargantuan vessels that blotted out the stars. Zarthan witnessed the fruits of his efforts unfold in the destruction playing out on his view screen. Kriak cruisers splintered into clouds of metal fragments with each hit, their return fire fizzling out harmlessly against the Zonian defenses. It was like watching insects try to fight a blast furnace. A grin spread over Zarthan's face. It wouldn't be long before the Kriak were nothing but a paragraph in the history of his conquests. An example to the rest of the galaxy of what happened to those who opposed Zorgon might. The Emperor was about to turn his chair around to accept a chalice of Mamoni wine from a concubine when his censor officer piped up, "Your Excellency, a new contact has arrived on the battlefield, bearing markings and an electronic signature we've never encountered." Zarthan spun back to the main display, wine forgotten. There, dropping out of warp, was a monumental dreadnought, dwarfing his largest ships. Its strange angular hull bristled with enough guns to arm an entire fleet on its own. "What in the seven hells is that?" Zarthan spat. "Hail them immediately." The comm officer stabbed at her console. "This is Captain Jason Reeves of the United Earth ship Defiant. Attacking the Kriak was a big mistake, you Zorgon bastards. Let's see how you like fighting someone who can hit back." As soon as the human finished speaking, the new warship opened up on the nearest Zonian frigate with a full alpha strike. Missiles, mass drivers, and beam weapons converged on the target. Impossibly, the frigate's shields failed instantly, the hull shattering like cheap plastic. Zarthan watched in horror as the human ship tore deeper into his lines. Their weapons scythed through his prized armada like a force demon's claws through flesh. Zonian shields, the product of decades of refinement, couldn't withstand more than one or two hits. The Emperor leapt from his throne and stormed over to the section of the bridge where his gunnery crews worked. He cuffed the battery commander on the back of his head. "Get it together," Zarthan snarled. "I want all forward lances firing on that human monstrosity immediately." As his ships ponderously reoriented to face the human vessel, Zarthan felt his gut sinking like a stone. The realization struck him with the force of an asteroid impact. He had made a grave miscalculation. These humans were far more dangerous than he ever imagined. His empire had finally encountered a foe that could be its equal. Jason Reeves stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, his hands clasped behind his back and his brow furrowed in concentration. The main view screen showed the chaotic swirl of ships locked in bitter combat. Hulls flared and exploded with each exchange of fire. The Kriak fleet was in bad shape, their formations shattered and ships rapidly winking out. "Status report," Jason barked. His first officer consulted her terminal. "The Zonian fleet is pressing their attack. The Kriak have lost 70% of their ships. They're not going to last much longer at this rate. Jason nodded grimly. When Earth had picked up the faint distress call from the embattled Kriak, there had been heated arguments at Terran High Command about whether to get involved. Humanity was still new to the galactic stage, and many in the Admiralty were hesitant to stick their noses into an alien war. But Jason had lobbied hard for an intervention. He understood the strategic value of the Kriak. They had a reputation as an industrious, trade-focused people with a network of colonies and mining outposts scattered across this region of space. Plus, they shared a border with Earth's fledgling colony in the Oort Cloud. If the expansionist Zonian Empire wiped them out and claimed their territory, it would put Earth's holdings at risk. So Jason had played up the threat of Zonian aggression and the importance of protecting a species unable to defend themselves. Those arguments had won the day. The Defiant was dispatched at flank speed to the Kriak home system just as the Zonians commenced their assault. Now, seeing the Zonian fleet breaking apart under his guns, Jason allowed himself a quick fist pump. The decision to send the UES Defiant had been the right call. It was the most advanced ship in Earth's space forces, a sleek, deadly dreadnought that outclassed anything else on the battlefield. The Defiant's triple-armored hull shrugged off the few laser blasts that connected, while its own weaponry, banks of quantum phase cannons and neutron torpedoes, tore through Zonian shields like they were made of paper. The lizards had clearly never encountered human weapons before and had nothing to counter them. Captain, the Zonian flagship is changing course, heading straight for us, the sensor officer reported. Jason leaned forward in his command chair. It seemed the Zonian commander had finally realized the humans posed the real threat. He was going to try and take the Defiant out of the fight. Helm, come about to face them, but keep us moving. Don't let them draw a bead on us, Jason ordered. Maneuvering jets fired, and the mighty dreadnought swung its prow toward the oncoming Zonian warship, even as its guns continued to hammer the enemy fleet. Jason clicked the comm button on his armrest. Sarah, I need the neutron cannons prepped for a full volley. Divert power from the aft shield array if you have to. When that bastard gets in range, I want to put him down hard. Aye, sir, Lieutenant Commander Thompson replied crisply. She bent over her console, fingers flying as she worked to comply with his instructions. The bridge became tense as a coiled spring as the Zonian flagship bore down on them, trailing fire from a dozen different hull breaches. It was ugly, with a spiked prow and a bulbous aft section that glowed a baleful red, almost twice the size of the Defiant. It began to belch bright yellow energy bolts the instant it entered extreme range. The human shields flared but held under the onslaught, flickering only faintly. A low, rising hum started to build from somewhere deep within the Defiant. The neutron cannons were coming online, capacitors greedily sucking up every spare watt of reactor output to charge their magnetic accelerator coils. Jason watched the holographic range indicator, mentally urging the Zonian ship to close the distance faster. His fingers tightened on his armrests as the icon edged into optimal firing position. Almost there! Fire! Jason roared. A brilliant blue-white beam erupted from the Defiant's forward gun ports. It struck the Zorgon flagship head-on. The alien ship's shields flashed, struggling to repel the neutron stream for a single second before failing spectacularly. The beam punched clean through the center of the massive vessel, vaporizing armor, deck, and crew alike. It exited the far side in a spray of molten metal. For a moment, the two halves of the dissected warship hung motionless in space. Then a series of internal explosions ripped them apart, scattering debris across the void. Cheers erupted on the Defiance bridge as the Zonian flagship disintegrated, but Jason quelled any premature celebration with a sharp hand gesture. They may have just cut the head off the snake, but the rest of the Zorgon fleet was still out there and Earth had no reinforcements in range. He punched the fleet comm channel. This is Captain Reeves to all Kriak ships. Form up on the Defiant. Maintain a defensive sphere formation. Damaged Kriak cruisers and frigates, trailing atmosphere from breached hulls, maneuvered to cluster tightly around the human dreadnought. Together, they presented a concentrated defense that the scattered Zorgon ships would find difficult to penetrate. Weapons free, Jason commanded. Let's finish the job. One by one, the remaining Zorgon vessels were targeted and destroyed, their inferior shielding unable to withstand the concentrated firepower directed at them. When the last Zorgon ship had been reduced to a burning hulk, Jason finally allowed himself a breath of relief. The Kriak were safe for now. But in the back of his mind, he knew this was just the beginning. The Zorgon Empire wouldn't take this defeat lying down. War had come to the galaxy, and Earth would have to fight to defend its place among the stars. Jason turned to his bridge crew, seeing the same realization reflected in their faces. He gave them a firm nod. Set course for Earth. We've got a war to win.